Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here with Tommy Ragsdale, who is in charge of strategic development for a group called 360 Privacy. They're here in Nashville, and their work really is all about protecting the security, information security for public figures, for high-profile individuals, for high-net-worth individuals. And they really help protect and keep them safe from cybersecurity. That also translates into helping to keep them safe inside their home environment as well. So we'll get into some of that and just talk about all things cybersecurity with people, their homes, and all that sort of thing. So Tommy, thanks so much for being here. Tommy was a naval aviator. Worked for many years at the Center for Medical Interoperability and is now here with 360 Privacy. So could you give us a little background on the company, yourself, just so people have some context for who they're listening to and your company?
Yeah, happy to do so. And I can talk about this topic for far longer than we have allotted today, so maybe we'll have to do another installment. But for sure, so 360 Privacy is a team made up almost entirely of veterans from the special operations communities and intelligence communities. And the entire objective of the company is to protect our clients' digital reputation and footprint and all of the things that come with that. You made a really good point in the intro about what we call convergence. So the existence and risk in the digital world and where that manifests itself into the physical world. They are becoming so much more intertwined these days than they ever have before that it's almost a full spectrum concern for a lot of our clients. We've been around for about 3 years, a little bit more than that, and started in the entertainer space. Obviously, we're based here in Nashville, and some of our earliest clients were in the country music space. Today, the client spans all verticals, spans many net worths, and we see athletes, entertainers, politicians, family offices, multi-generational family offices, Fortune 200 executives, their teams, etc. So while it started in kind of one place, the applicability was pretty broad and pretty quick, frankly.
So you're in charge of the strategic development. Are they coming to you because they've had an issue that's happened, or is this a prevention mode? They're seeking out someone to help. How does that relationship kind of evolve or take place?
It really takes place in both ways. What we would prefer is the preemptive, right? Humans are reactive, particularly when they assess risk. So we find that most times it's people coming to us after they've had an event. Now, I do have a number of strategic partners out there, whether that's multifamily offices, boutique security firms, or others that are kind of the conduit to the end client. Oftentimes they do a good job of bringing people in preemptively, but it does kind of take all forms with respect to that.
Okay. So, and you obviously are focused on the high net worth individuals, public figures, etc. How does that? Don't we all have issues? Just the average person who's listening to this or watching this, they've got their own security issues as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the meat and potatoes of what we do for our clients is the removal of their personal information from what we call the data brokerage ecosystem. So it is a sub-ecosystem of companies that are buying and reselling all of our personal data on a constant basis. We do the removal for our clients from over 370 different data brokers, which is all of the data brokers that are out there. Several of those data brokers have over 400 million profiles alone. So to your point, yes, we all face this challenge. It's obviously for the high net worth individual or high profile individual, it's a much more acute issue. It's also not really an easy thing to do. So for some people, it's a price range issue.
Okay. Okay. So just them being the high. So my next question was, what makes your clients so much more vulnerable?
Yeah.
Just because they have so much more information out there, they've got obviously got a lot more money than the average person, so people are after that.
It's a couple things. I do think that in most of our cases, or our clients' cases, they originally had more data out there than kind of the average person. The other thing is whether they're an entertainer or a public persona or not, almost all of our clients have these seminal events in their professional life that raise their profile. So whether they sell a business, take a business public, or have some other type of event, that creates a spotlight on them and makes them a target. So they may be a relatively private person, but there are business transactions that draw attention to them, and all of a sudden a bad actor is going to want to take advantage of that and try and exploit the data that is out there.
Okay. So what are the, I mean, have you thought about, there's dozens of potential threats, but could you kind of touch on what are the top 2 or 3 threats that your clients need to be aware of?
Yeah, so number one is that personal data removal piece. And I say that because I've got a few tiers of service that I offer my clients, but I don't let anybody enroll without doing that. If the client isn't concerned with how much of their personal information is easily accessible to opportunistic threats, then there's really not much of a point to trying to do dark web type of work or concierge level work at their home. You really got to take that information piece out of it. The second thing...
Can you explain for people that wouldn't know, and you might have to explain it to me, when you say dark web, what is that? What's the dark web?
If my answer to it and some of my technical guys' answers to it will be a little bit different, but what I like to say for most people is there's kind of 2 things that I point out about the dark web. The first is that it is the part of the internet that is not indexed by search engines. Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, that kind of stuff, right? So if I type something into one of those search engines, I'm not getting directed to the dark web.
Okay.
The other thing about it is it takes a different set of tools to access. So instead of using Chrome or Firefox or Edge or something like that as my web browser, I have to use other sets of tools. Those are kind of the 2 big differences. Now, there is, if you look at it from the big picture, another new term might be deep web. That technically is everything that's not indexed. Dark web is the portion of the deep web that is nefarious and has bad actors, illegal activities, all that sort of stuff going on there. So that's kind of how I paint it for clients that don't speak technical.
Okay. All right. So since March of 2020, we've all gone through this incredible journey called the global pandemic. It sent people obviously rushing to home, companies setting up home offices, or companies having their employees set up home offices, even buying computers for them for their home offices. Has all of that created just a huge increase of activity?
It's made it way worse in many ways. So the first is that once we all went home for an extended period of time, we all signed up for lots of services. When we signed up for services, what did? We gave those services our information. And instantaneously, those companies sold that information as an additional source of revenue, or in some cases as a primary source of revenue, which made us all that much more exposed. Secondly, people with lots of time on their hands started to peruse those data brokerages. What can I do with this? How can I use this to exploit someone? And that's created a lot more threats out there. And then thirdly, and this kind of gets into the enterprise space and a little bit kind of some of the auxiliary stuff that we do, as people have started to move back into the office, particularly at your executive level, they're bringing a lot of bad stuff with them back into the environment. So in their home networks and home environments, they're not nearly as pristine or have as good a hygiene as you might in your actual office environment, where you have a security team that's running scans and managing intrusions and all that sort of stuff. They're basically bringing a bunch of germs back into the work environment, which is causing problems for the companies.
Okay. So if we focus on the home office security, because there obviously still a whole lot of people.
Yep.
And it's become just, much more, your 7 days of your life now they're just mixed between home office, corporate office, etc. How do you guys, when you're looking at someone's home, what are some things, and I think a lot of people would be really interested in knowing and understanding, what are some things that you guys look at in someone's house to help protect them? Is it the Wi-Fi system? Is it the computer and the programs? What are some things that...
So I'll say it's all of the above, but I'll try and focus on a couple. So some of the first places we start are with our clients' devices, the smartphone they have, the laptop they have, that sort of stuff. Setting those devices up with things like virtual private networks, VPNs. Those are tools that can help mask the identity of the device and the user while you're operating on the web. Setting them up with things like password managers or encrypted email accounts and things like that. Those are great end user tools that we help with our clients. Now, as far as the infrastructure goes, we have many clients that they may have large estates. So they set up these Wi-Fi networks and they crank them up really loud, meaning they put a lot of power output so they can reach their network out at their pool and out at other places, and we totally understand that. What that does though is creates a lot of spillover. And if a bad actor knows where a high net worth individual lives, they'll pull right up on the street, break open their laptop, listen for that Wi-Fi network, because now it's spilled over far beyond their property, and start accessing their network. So we do a lot of that kind of work. How do we rein that in? How do we put it where it needs to be so that we're not so exposed? The other thing that
so their next door neighbor can't listen.
That's right. Or just someone who found their name and address on the data brokerage websites because they had an IPO.
Yeah.
And want to pull up and start accessing everything on their phones or something like that.
Yeah.
Or their home computers. The other things that we see are the pieces of hardware themselves. So I've got a router at my house. I've got Wi-Fi connected cameras. We almost all have Ring cameras, Nest cameras, Arlo cameras all around our homes. And not to scare the audience too much, but many of those things, when they connect and then they operate with their supporting backend, so the company's network environment, they open what are called ports in our routers, and that creates vulnerabilities for our clients. So when we go in and assess what's connected to a client's network, we make sure that only the necessary things are open and functioning for those devices and systems to do what they're designed to do, because otherwise it just opens back doors for anyone, frankly, who wants to get in.
Yeah. 'Cause I started thinking, well, it must be, it's vastly different. Some of the people that you're working with, I know Kid Rock has built a 35,000 square foot home.
Yeah.
Now, when you start trying to protect something like that, I mean, he obviously wants Wi-Fi everywhere.
Sure.
That's a whole lot different than a 2,000 square foot home that the average person is in.
That's right. And there's even some of the basics, right? Like your router has the access name and password. Most people don't change it. It's usually admin and password, or admin and admin, or something like that. And anybody can do that and access that device that way. So we do a lot of that hygiene for our clients. When they bring new things into the environment, they call us to help make sure that it's set up appropriately. Now, we're not their IT person. Many of our high net worth, ultra high net worth clients have an IT person. We just work in tandem with them to really make that infrastructure a hard target.
Yeah, and a lot of them would have a home office in terms of,
Many
it's not
times.
just a home office, but a home office in a sense that they've got someone there that is taking care of all of their finances, they're taking care of their banking, and I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we work with a number of single and multi-family offices that have that sort of apparatus. Most of them, however, don't have expertise in the space that we work, so we like to support them in that sense.
Yeah, okay. So a breach happens. a client is breached, they're held hostage. I don't know. You can tell me what typically happens,
Yeah.
but what's the best first step that someone needs to take if they discover that they've been breached?
So, I mean, in our case, if we have a client that's that way, we want our special projects team to be the first call. That's not always going to be the case, but that's what we encourage them to do because they're just not going to be equipped to really start that playbook. And then we'll start to do some of the general contractor, the GC of this. Do we need to bring in, some specialized response or something like that? We have a no-fee retainer with a big multinational cybersecurity outfit that can really be an asset if we need them.
Mm-hmm.
In the case that they're not our clients, frankly, once a compromise happens, a lot of things are going to be gone. Now it's how do we start to rebuild our digital posture so that we don't become a victim again, because we will become a victim again if we don't do this. So in our experience, our flagship service of data removal significantly reduces the risk to our clients. We don't guarantee the way or the likelihood of a compromise or a breach at that point. We just almost never see it once the personal data is removed because it's so easy to access and it's such a good way to exploit someone.
Okay. When the bad actor does compromise someone, and I mean, are they often hijacking them? They're asking for money. They're asking for something.
Generally, what we see is they're trying to exploit that individual to access something behind that individual,
Okay.
like a business, right? So your exposure for your personal information, for me, is a way to exploit you, your family, and your business.
Yeah.
That's what we generally see that they're targeting, on the back end, and just trying to use a soft target to get there. It wasn't but maybe 5 months ago that we launched what we call our enterprise service, because we'd have a number of clients, CEO for instance, who saw the value of his data removal and other monitoring that we were doing and techniques, and then he thought, wait a second, I've got a general counsel, I've got a CFO, I've got an XYZ, they're all attack vectors into my company.
Mm-hmm.
How do I start to protect that? And so we created a new engagement model that made sense in the corporate enterprise sense,
Yeah.
and that's been probably our fastest growing line of business.
What's the craziest sort of situation you've come across when it comes to cyber?
It's
security.
They kind of run the gamut, but I'll a couple of anecdotes that might be valuable. So one I'll tell you that illustrates the risk and the distribution of personal data. So we have one client, female country music singer. Everybody who's watching would know who she is. We got her on board before her first single kind of really hit and started doing her data deletion. And for context, when I do an initial deletion on a client, it's somewhere between 400 and 600 profiles I'm pulling down for that client. And then over time it falls, but it never goes to zero because just the way the data ecosystem is and the way we all live our digital lives. Over time it gets down to somewhere between 30 and 60 on a monthly basis for a client. She was probably lower than that. She had taken on board all the tips and techniques that we'd offered her. It was real low on a monthly basis, and then one day she popped on about 160 different brokerage sites, just kind of right at once. So we knew there was an acute issue. We reached out to her, said, "You've jumped up significantly. What happened? How did this play out the way it did?" She was insistent. She had followed all the rules, right? She maintained her hygiene, and then a couple minutes into the conversation, it clicked, and she said, "Oh, you know what? I signed up for a workout at a very well-known workout chain and used my real information, and we went back and looked at that company's terms of service. Not only did it say that they could sell their clients' data, it said they would sell their clients' data, and within about 4 hours, her data had metastasized to over 160 different data brokers.
Wow.
I mean, it just happened so fast. And it was because she slipped up once and used her real address and things like that when she signed up for the workout. So I think that's a good story to articulate to people the risk that for high net worth, high profile with their personal data.
Wow. Just amazing.
And I'll say one other that, and it won't be a long drawn out story, but we've seen a lot of data brokerages that now are trying to scrape or steal data of any kind that might be associated with a principal. And the most interesting examples of that is we've seen the data brokerages no longer just going for social security numbers and real addresses and things like that. They're scraping Amazon wish lists, Audible reading lists. And depending on what's your Amazon wish list and Audible reading list, you could have some serious reputational issues or business issues that could be associated and exploited with that kind of vulnerability.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the next level.
Yes.
Where does it all end? Oh my God, it doesn't, I guess.
That's a good question.
Okay. So just back to the home office for just a second. So if how are people best to plug their home office into their corporate office? What does that need to look like to really, because I mean, people come to us now and they're saying, actually, I need a 3-bedroom house, but I need a 4th room from my office. And that's now become a demand, a want, a need. So how do you plug into that corporate environment when you spend that time?
I'll say a couple of things. So the first thing, most basic, is don't mix what you're doing on different devices. I mean, many of us have a corporate computer, right, and a personal computer. It's not going to happen 100% of the time, but try not to mix your activity on those devices. That's the easiest way to kind of keep that locked down. The next thing I would do, and we advise clients on this all the time, sometimes we don't just advise it, sometimes we execute it, is make sure that you're getting good hardware. And what I mean by that is there are certain bits of hardware like routers and Wi-Fi access points that are manufactured in certain parts of the world that really like to listen and sniff things. Make sure you're not buying those types of devices. And again, that's easier said than done. It's part of why our clients retain our services, but it's pretty important.
Well, this has been great. I guess those are my questions. Thank you so much for being with us today. Maybe can we end up and could you tell people how do they get in touch with you?
Sure.
How do they access you? Can people follow you online?
Yeah, so as a digital privacy and security company, we don't have a huge social media footprint, but we are on LinkedIn and we do have a website. So our website's 360privacy.io, and you can also just find us as 360 Privacy on LinkedIn. Easy to reach out to me via LinkedIn or via email, and I'm sure we can put email addresses and things on the show notes and things like that. For our footprint, we're about 23, 24 employees, all but 2 right here in Nashville. Our office is in Brentwood on Old Hickory Boulevard. All the technical work we do is here. We don't offshore any of our clients' privacy work. We think that's kind of anathema to the concept. Yeah. So, and then we've got kind of more on the sales BD side of the house that are in Seattle and in New York. But we're always accessible. Our clients are all across the country. We do a lot of travel to go meet with them and all that sort of stuff. So we try to meet our clients where they are and where they need us to be.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you all enjoyed that. If you did, make sure you press like, share it with your friends. I think it's some great information for all of you at your homes. If you're looking for a home, then make sure that when you're setting things up, that you're plugged in the right way. And that was some great advice and tips and tricks and hacks, so to speak, for people in their home offices. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to talking with you soon, and have a great day.